by and large, I think we can mostly say that this is the biggest balls up this government have made yet, isn't it?
I mean, it's an absolute spectacular fiasco.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's all very well for Rishi Sunak to try to regain the initiative, to try to look like he's all dynamic and he's got a grip of this and he's got a grand plan.
He doesn't.
By saying that he's going to introduce emergency legislation. Hang on a minute, why didn't you introduce that legislation, about 2 years ago, 3 years ago, or your predecessor? Because it is an emergency. So if it were that easy, they would have done it already. And, you know, look, the reality is they're just wasting time now, trying to sound as if they're doing something. I confidently predict that whatever emergency legislation they introduce, it won't work. There'll be more challenges and nobody will be deported to Rwanda. And I think voters are astonished to think that the integrity of our borders and our ability to deal with the migrant crisis rests on Rwanda's human rights record. It shouldn't rest on any such thing. It should rest on our own ability, for example, to turn back the boats with the use of our navy if it need be.
Well, Madeline, listening to that bloke from the Supreme Court, it sounds like very dangerous to stay in London if you're from Rwanda as well, because apparently they're going to be... Maybe they should use that as the excuse to remove them. I don't know. But it is. I mean, we keep hearing these legal arguments which mean nothing to most ordinary people, right?
Yeah, I think that, you know, it's a relatively new, recent way of doing politics where ultimate responsibility lies somewhere else that is not the Commons, that is not Parliament, that is not the democratic structures, but it is some kind of remote legalistic structure. And in fact, you know, the Supreme Court is a very recent innovation. I mean, it was brought in the late noughties under Blair, and yet it's always being spoke of as if, you know, this is absolutely inalienable, sort of like Magna Carta era. And I think a lot of people will wonder, why is it that clearly every opportunity the British public has had to express a view on whether they want more immigration or less, or whether they want to see harsh action on illegal migration or weak, and they've made their position very clear, and yet the numbers have continued to rise for both legal and illegal migration. And, you know, it's as if we have a government that's kind of in office but not actually able to pull vital levers in public policy.
Isabel, we've got a machine in this country, haven't we, which goes from the Home Office to the legal business to politicians, to charities, to NGOs, to all sorts of, you know, groups of people who don't think...
signed up to trying to thwart it.
Absolutely.
Even those that are ostensibly being paid by the government to do the precise opposite, i.e. the civil service, being paid by the taxpayer to carry out what we have elected the government to do and make happen. It is extraordinary that we are where we are with this.
It really is.
With this problem.
And it's not going to go anywhere. Let's bring in a senior researcher at the Migration Observatory at Oxford University, Peter Walsh. Peter, I mean, it seems to me that there's an awful lot of people that don't want anything to change. And, I mean, as far as the ECHR is concerned, it doesn't really appear to matter anymore because it's a British court, the Supreme Court, that has stopped this from happening. And surely if the government wants to get rid of anything, they should get rid of the Supreme Court, shouldn't they?
Well, I think even the European Court, even if we were to withdraw from that, one thing the Supreme Court made clear is that this law that does not permit us to send asylum seekers to countries they've fled from is also in our own domestic law. So there's a real question here about how the government could possibly dismantle 3 different acts of parliament in which is contained this protection against removing refugees to countries where they could be at risk. It's a real pickle that the government's in.
It's a complete... I mean, it's almost as if somebody set them up, isn't it? You'd almost think that somebody actually put a load of stuff in a sort of time capsule and said, let's wait till, you know, like year 13 of the Tory government and they'll try and do something. They won't be able to do it.
I mean, I think they have got no one to blame except themselves for choosing Rwanda. I mean, we actually have bits of old empire left that they could have used, which would at least have run according to some of our own rules and regulations. I think it's also worth just noting that it's hardly as if Labour would grip this problem. I mean, I sat on live television yesterday with a member of the shadow cabinet who time and again refused to pledge that Labour would bring down net migration. They don't even want to bring
Right.
down net migration, never mind deal with anyone illegal.
But this is the problem,
Yeah.
and this is what I was getting at, Madeline. I mean, when we see James Cleverly, who now looks like the next victim of the Home Office, because we know what's going to happen. He's going to do the job for about a year and he'll fail.
And obviously.
probably by then the Tories won't even be in government anymore. But when he said, you know, we anticipated that this result might happen.
Brilliant.
Oh,
Well
really?
done.
Fantastic. Yeah. Well, you had to game it, did you? You had to go, well, we could win or we could lose or that's about it. So,
It's a very expensive way of
very
doing
expensive. And we've paid 140 million quid to Rwanda so far, for which we don't appear to have got very much.
Nothing. I mean, literally nothing.
Right.
I don't think, except that they're kind of willing, in principle, to accommodate some people they're never going to have to accommodate. Nice money if you're the Rwandan government, isn't it?
It's very, very depressing. But I think Isabel made a really important point that this is not just a Conservative problem.
Yeah.
I was in the chamber today watching both sides of the argument, and the Labour MPs were looking absolutely cock-a-hoop about all of this.
Right.
And I just think that
Very bad
it's
on
not-
the
it's-
doorstep,
it's-
by the
it's
way. You know, if their
yeah.
images are captured, grinning away
Yeah.
as the government
Yeah.
fails to stop the boats,
Right.
I would say that's not a
Yeah.
vote-winning
Well, it's-
policy, particularly in the red wall.
it's unedifying to look as if you're, you know, taking actual delight in the
Right.
fact that we don't have control of our borders. And from what I can make out, the Labour position has been very, very foggy so far, but it seems to consist of a deal with the EU in which we might end up taking more migrants
Brilliant.
than we currently
perversely-
do.
Yeah, although perversely, the EU seems to be tightening up on their
Yes, I mean,
rules
you've
on
got
migrants.
Germany has
Yeah.
recently just accelerated its mechanisms for deportation. You've got Giorgia Meloni very clear. She's not prepared for
Yeah.
Italy to become Europe's
They've
refugee
rediscovered a
camp.
border
And,
between
you
France
know-
and Italy, you know.
And to be fair, you know, the numbers have been going down in Britain. There have been some... the returns agreement with Albania seems to have been a real success, but of course it's been massively overshadowed by everything else.
Yeah, exactly right. Peter, let me come back to you. I mean, it's right to say it's not a Tory problem, but it's not just a British problem either. I mean, this is a massive problem for the world. I mean, I've mentioned this before on my shows, that there are people from sub-Saharan Africa making their way now to Central America and crossing the border from Mexico into the United States. I was hearing from a friend of mine in New York that they've got a massive migrant hotel problem in the centre of Manhattan. You come out of Grand Central Station, the Roosevelt Hotel is home to something like 900 or 1,000 migrants who have come in illegally. And so this is a massive problem for the world, isn't it?
Yeah, there are many countries that are experiencing this. I mean, if you look at the numbers of the US, it rather dwarfs ours in terms of unauthorized entry.
Yeah.
Spain, for the last few years, has regularly been getting tens of thousands more unauthorized maritime arrivals than the UK, Italy as well. Of course, the peak of the Syrian crisis, 2015, Greece had almost 1 million people arriving without authorization by boat. So it's absolutely true. The UK is not the only country experiencing this. And actually, compared with some of our European neighbours in the US, we're not experiencing this issue to the extent that they are.
No, exactly right. And to go back to this machine, I mean, an incredible piece by Stephen Edgington well, he tweeted it today from the Telegraph, your paper, Madeline. Anonymous Home Office official explaining why no matter who is Home Secretary, Britain's borders will remain open. And it's an incredible indictment of the way the Home Office works, from sort of people only working 1 day a week in the office, believing that they've got a moral and legal duty not to carry out what they decide is evil government policy. I mean, it's quite extraordinary.
I mean, it is bewildering. I don't know, all these kind of bleeding hearts that think this is a good idea, do they ever actually assess the impact of uncontrolled migration on some of the least well-off people in this country? The way that the black market in labour is massively depressing wages in some of the poorest parts of our country. The pressure on our public services is not in the interest of the people all those bleeding hearts think they're representing.
Yeah, and, you know, when you have exceptionally high net migration, you know, it has an impact on social cohesion. That's not to say that migration is bad, but when you have such high levels of it, it creates intense pressure on public services and also just whittles away at the social fabric. It's not what people want. And if people can't get that through democratic means, then that's a very worrying thing indeed.
And what I see now, and I hear all the time from people who call into this show and other shows on TalkTV, is, you know, we've all grown up with migration and immigration. I grew up in London. London was always, you know, a fascinating city. It was always a great place to go and find little pockets of little Portugal or little Italy, or, you know, there was a Jewish contingent in the East End. You know, even when the first migration came from kind of the subcontinent of India, you know, the East End, Brick Lane became a fascinating place. It's very different now. You know, and same with New York. You know, New York, I went to live in New York in the 80s, and it was a fascinating place. Everybody moved there from somewhere else, but they were all New Yorkers. And now people say to me, it's not like that. You know, if you walk down the street in Rotherham or you walk down the street in parts of Manchester, you know, it doesn't seem like it's England anymore.
That's about integration, or rather lack of it. And I think that the Gaza-Israel crisis has massively stripped away that whole problem. It has exposed what we've done, which is effectively, I'm afraid to use this word, imported a lot of people who do not share our values, they don't respect our values, and they don't want us to, you know, they actually want to create those divisions and maintain those divisions and indeed make those divisions worse. And that's the difference that you're referring to. And as you say, I mean, this is a global problem. So many countries experience it. One case that came up in the House of Commons last week was relating to Pakistan that has 4 million Afghans. Again, we can say that some of that is our responsibility. They are taking a very tough approach, forcibly deporting, for which they're getting a load of grief. But actually, they've been incredibly accommodating over the years, and they cannot sustain that level of illegal migrant.
But I'm actually hearing more and more for people who would have historically called themselves liberals, commentators, centrist people, that actually they realise that it's impossible to keep up the kind of liberal norms that they value so much if we have such high migration and we don't have control of our borders, because that will, you know, polarise society, and it will, you know, as Isabel said, it will mean bring a lot more people living here that don't share those values. And of course, the more you have perhaps coming in one go, the harder it is to integrate and to find some kind of common consensus on which a society can flourish.
And we are importing, as Isabel says, these kind of feuds from foreign lands. We've seen it in Leicester, we've seen it in Bradford.
I find the sea of Palestinian flags, frankly, deeply disturbing.
It is.
This is not Britain.
No.
You know, I want to see, if you're going to have Palestinian flags, can we also have some Union Jacks up there?
Well, no, apparently not. No, you're not allowed to wave one of those because that's provocative.
It's also visible in politics as well, where politics is becoming incredibly sectarian. And, you know, you understand MPs obviously wish to represent their constituents, but sometimes there are debates in the Commons that feel a bit like proxy battles about some international dispute that might be, you know, thousands of miles away.
Well, we saw the ceasefire vote tonight. Peter, if you're still there, Dr. Walsh, I'd just like to finish up with you. I mean, I know I don't want to put you on the spot as such, but I mean, is there anything that Rishi Sunak could do? I mean, this emergency legislation sounds like just kicking the can down the road. Nobody really believes it's going to work. And if it did work, it will take so long that he won't even be Prime Minister anymore. I mean, is there anything he can do to stop the boats?
Yes, I mean, there are loads of things that the government can do. Deterrence policy is one of them, as exemplified by Rwanda. They do a lot of enforcement, perhaps a deal with France. Cooperation probably important, but
we've given them loads of money already for a deal.
Zero. Will that reduce the boats to zero? That is going to be very, very difficult to do indeed.
It's pointless throwing yet more money at France. They've completely shown bad faith in this, I'm afraid. Absolutely not going to
They've spent it all on riding boots, apparently. You know, I mean, I'm sure they like their riding boots, but I mean, 40 million quid down the drain on supposed security to stop the boats from leaving. The Belgians have done it, apparently. The Belgians have stopped the boats from leaving Belgium, so the French clearly don't want to.
And we know that the Australians have done it as well. It's very effective. When you turn back the boats, you just make it clear you're not tolerating this, and they stop coming.
But I think another fundamental issue is simply that, you know, we are governed by the 1951 UN Refugee Convention, which was drafted at a time when the world's circumstances were completely different. We were not in the same globalised circumstance. And, you know, there's absolutely no way that Europe can possibly sustain all of those people who, according to that law, have a right to claim asylum here. That's just the reality of it. I think, you know, we might need to go back to first principles and revisit that too.
Well, I'm not on TikTok, as you can probably imagine, but you can see the adverts out there now, can't you? For, oh, we've won again, just keep coming because they can't do anything.
That is exactly the point. Every time the government screws it up, it is like another gigantic global advert for come to Britain because those guys over there have no way of stopping you. So well done. It's a massive recruiting sergeant for all of what we're trying to stop.
And the thing that really gets me is the fact that we're not a country that is hostile to asylum seekers. We've welcomed
on the contrary,
heaps of people from Ukraine, from Afghanistan, from Hong Kong and other countries around the world. But I think we're a generous country. But there is a limit to what people will accept.
We're also
and this, I think,
populated.
this really tests that, and it makes it so that people will be suspicious of all kinds of asylum and all, perhaps all kinds of migration too.
Yeah, absolutely right.